Hey, real quick, it'd be great if you could consider subscribing to the YouTube channel down below. It really helps us out.
Dan Rubenstein, welcome back. We're going to bring on an honored guest.
Yes, A-list.
On today's episode, we will get to that momentarily. Hello, welcome back.
Thank you.
And as always, I'm Ty, he is Dan. This is A Solid Verbal. Thank you for tuning back in. So we're kind of in that weird period now where we're getting ready for bowl season. We're getting ready for the postseason. This is a unique opportunity for us to check back in with friends, to talk about bigger picture issues, and to give folks a flavor of what's been going on in and around the world of college football. So with all that being said, our guest of honor today, Dan, is
Bruce Feldman, of course.
Bruce Feldman, our friend Bruce Feldman.
I think mostly we have questions about the Buckle Up LA Bowl. That's also this weekend, apparently. Washington SMU is literally like back-to-back with the Army-Navy game. Did we realize that?
I did not realize that, no. And we got to talk about Army-Navy, too. I want to give picks for that game before we get out of here.
It's Bucked Up LA or Buckled Up? I have no idea what Bucked Up is. I think it's related to Gronk.
Okay.
Am I seeing this correctly?
It was the LA Bowl presented by Gronk, I believe, the last 2 years.
Yes, well, this is the Bucked Up LA Bowl hosted by Gronk.
They're just using him like he's a gadget.
I guess so. Maybe it's just LA Bowl this year. I don't know. It's very confusing to me what's going on with this LA Bowl. But we have, I want to say, was it Washington SMU?
Okay. Yeah.
The Bucked Up LA Bowl. Again, I don't know if Gronk's
It's not a bad matchup.
No, not at all. No, sorry, it's Boise State, Washington.
Boise State, Washington, yeah.
Excuse me, it was rumored to be SMU. I'm getting all my information wrong. I'm not in bowl season yet, Ty. You'll have to excuse me. Boise State, Washington, in the Bucked Up LA Bowl hosted by Gronk. Okay.
Great.
So, any early lean, Ty, as I put you on the spot before we bring Bruce on?
I would lean Washington.
I think I'm leaning Washington.
I'm
as
not,
well.
Unless there's a weird opt-out situation, and I'm kind of going off the cuff here, so Washington fans can excuse me, but Boise State on defense left a lot to be desired, and I think Washington's a pretty good team. They were very much under the radar this year, finish 8-4. I think the future is very bright for the roster that Jed Fish has put together, and this gives them an opportunity to kind of build on what they started this season. So, granted, Boise State coming off another Mountain West Conference win, their third in a row.
Right.
But I think there's a reason that Washington's a 9.5-point favorite here, and I just like their offense a lot more in this game. So I would go Huskies, barring any kind of elaborate opt-out situation.
Arizona is taking on SMU. I knew SMU was coming to Southern California. Okay. That's in the Holiday Bowl.
Holiday Bowl, that's right.
Which is
another
January 2. That's the matchup I'm very much looking forward to, Arizona SMU. So yes, the Bucked Up LA Bowl is already upon us. I think we all remember growing up and thinking about the Bucked Up LA Bowls of years gone by. So, yeah, we have football this weekend.
We do have football this weekend. We've got a bowl game. We've got Army-Navy. I'll talk about Army-Navy here in just a little bit. But in the interim, hit follow, hit subscribe so that you don't miss any of our episodes. Dan and I are going to be going 3 a week until the season is through, at which point we'll flip it back over to twice per week. But as I said at the top, we now have an opportunity to catch back up with some friends of ours who know a thing or two about what's been going on around college football, items that we can't normally address with the level of detail that we know the Verballerhood demands. So we are bringing Bruce Feldman back on the show to talk about this wild coaching carousel. I want to ask him, how wild was it from his perspective? Because, we had all been sold this bill of goods that it was going to be crazy and there going to be all these openings, there'd be a lot of movement. And for sure, a lot of that was true, but I'm curious from Bruce's standpoint if it lived up to that billing, and we'll see what other morsels we can get from him along the way.
Can't wait.
All right, Dan, it is long overdue. We figure what time better than now than to bring back our good friend, our longtime friend, Mr. Bruce Feldman from Fox Sports, from The Athletic, from the Audible podcast. Going to talk some coaching news, going to talk a bunch of news here on the show today. Bruce, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing great. I enjoyed the hour we just spent BSing before this, so I'm ready. So I'm loosened up.
Yeah.
Dan has some issues with this AI face swapping app that he has been tormenting me with for the better part of the last year. And for people who watch our live streams and any of the stuff that we put out on video, every now and again he includes one my face on someone else's body as if it's some sort of Easter egg. So
it's the only thing I use AI for. I have no use for it otherwise, other than to put Ty's face on Jeff Goldblum's body from The Fly. I think
it's
that's
so random
the best
that you would
case.
think even Jeff Goldblum, it's like you're stuck there. Why not just...
Well, we have
why not
Stamos,
just-
Goldblum. I'm looking at Ty's features, right? Darker features, like a movie star good looks, then you put it together. I don't know. It works well. So yes, that's what we do when we're not talking about college football. Okay, it's December 10th. Coaching searches, playoff news, everything's happening at the same time. What to you sort of rings the loudest between your ears right now? Is it the playoff stuff? Is it the coaching changes? Is it portal stuff? What to you is reverberating?
Well, the thing that's reverberating the most, and Ty's got on what looks like a Notre Dame pullover, is...
it isn't, I promise you. But
I know. We have like 3 days in a row of Notre Dame AD Pete Bavacqua kind of sounding off. And I think... we had a live show on Sunday during the reveal, and I got to admit, I feel like Notre Dame got screwed here. Notre Dame got screwed not by Miami, but by Alabama. Especially the way Alabama was playing down the stretch. It wasn't just getting destroyed in the SEC title game. It was barely beating a bad Auburn team, losing at home to Oklahoma. Couple that with they got off to the start of the year with a dud, losing to what turned out to be a really bad Florida State team, right? So felt bad for Notre Dame. I didn't really sit there and think, oh my God, the ACC network showed the re-air of Miami Notre Dame from week 1 106 times in a row. But I get sort of that point. I think what's a little different, obviously, is just because they wear the patch on the baseball uniforms doesn't mean, like you're an equal partner here, right? So I think there was some of that, but and I don't have a problem with Notre Dame or the players going, you know what, we're not going in the Pop-Tart Bowl or the Pinstripe Bowl or the whatever bowl, like we're good without it. You can make your ratings someplace else or however, the beyond that thought process kicked in. But what was curious to me, just from from an optics standpoint, is the AD spoke on Sunday to Yahoo and, raised some eyebrows with some of his comments and, brought up how there's kind of a carve out next year at the CFP that will benefit Notre Dame in ways it doesn't benefit anybody else. And then I was like, okay, he aired out. Now all of a sudden you started seeing people kind of rip Notre Dame for opting out of the bowl game. I'm not one of them. I totally get where that positioning. And then the next day he goes on Dan Patrick, and now there's video of the comments, and those things are going viral, and they're strong comments. And I'm like, okay. And then I was like sitting there thinking, yeah, Pete Sampson, our terrific Notre Dame writer, was like, yeah, and he's doing a press conference tomorrow. So now there's another layer of this, and I just felt like, Notre Dame post, Brian Kelly in the Marcus Freeman era, especially last year, you saw a lot of stories of Notre Dame's really likable. Maybe people thought they weren't because Brian Kelly epitomized something different back then. And I felt like some of that kind of like all of a sudden Notre Dame went from being very sympathetic and likable to maybe not to, I think some people are rethinking that. Yeah. I'm not one of them, but I saw enough chatter to be like, man, they have really changed the narrative, and it spiraled into all these other little arguments, right? I wake up this morning or wake up Wednesday morning and I see our friend Bud Elliott is trending or whatever. And I was like, what the heck? And then I realized Bud Elliott waded into the Notre Dame scheduling conversation that came up, sort of half-cocked maybe, and then started getting clowned by some people probably who were more dialed in on that. And I was just like, ugh, this is kind of like what you kind of hate about the internet, when it just kind of takes on a life of its own.
I mean, the whole sport essentially in this moment, and let's be clear, including Ty and myself, like it kind of turns to sludge, right? When you're following along with what's going on with Lane Kiffin, when you're following along with the playoff committee, when you're following along with, the late parts of even like the early signing day stuff and who's going where, and there's drama, like there is a lot of heightened emotion in early December, and it feels especially I think toxic is too strong a word, but especially heated right now. And people know more about the business of college football and how things are connected to each other. And I wonder if it's actually good for the sport or if it's just good for people like the three of us who talk about the sport. I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that. Like, is it reaching like a fever pitch?
It's a good point. There's a conversation I had with somebody who works at ESPN. I don't want to, kind of put them out there without their say so on it. But just like we're kind of talking about the backwards nature of the CFP process, right? And I would assume we would all agree that, I've been pretty strong on this for a while. The Tuesday night show is garbage. It needs to go. It should never have been a thing, right?
Right.
But that, part of the old machine behind the playoff still was like, hey, it drives debate, and that's a good thing for the sport. No, I don't think it really is. I think it's a good thing for your TV ratings to drive debate.
Exactly.
But I think it undermines the credibility of the sport. Now, they could have certainly had a way more articulate CFP chairman than Hunter Yurachek, right? He's probably about as bad a representative as they probably could have thrown in that chair every Tuesday night.
Right.
But I don't know who you'd have who could really explain. We get, and I say we, and this means it's not just media, it's college football fans. We get lulled into this thought process of, well, the committee did this a year ago, or they did this, or the CFP did this, whatever. And, I said to Stu on our podcast a few times, I was like, hey, I'm not clowning you here, but like, that's a different committee and all the circumstances change. And whenever, it's kind of insanity when you expect a different, like they're making it up as they go along.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't
that Notre
think
Dame
that,
Miami back-to-back thing. They're just like, that's what we're doing it. And like, you're just like, but who decided that and why and when did these like weird tiers come about? And like, there's just, it's not about like transparency. It's just like they speak as if like, yes, we all understand this to be the case. You're like, what are you talking about back to back? Nobody remembers anything about this.
Yeah. This is a screwy analogy, but like, I feel like it's, there's a little bit of a parenting aspect of this where you may tell your child when they're younger something that you just kind of pull out of your butt. Yeah, and then they're like, years later they remind you and you're like, I don't know. I just made that up or whatever, kind of thing.
Right.
And obviously it's important with parenting, like you don't want to raise, a psychopath.
Right.
But in the case of this, it's like we're all expecting more, and by now we know we're not getting it. We're getting less, and I think that's the part where it's just like, yeah, it may be good for us because we air out our grievances and vent on these shows and different things, but it's frustrating, and just because you sit there and watch and you expect more from the people who are running the sport, and I think by now we all know better. Like, oh yeah, that guy's kind of an idiot. And that's, it's like, and then, it's frustrating because then all of a sudden you'll see, and it's happened a lot over the last year or two, where it's like, oh, we're going to turn to Congress. Oh yeah. There's another body of work that people think very highly of right now. Yeah. So it just, I love the sport. It kind of makes me cringe about all the other stuff that's connected to it.
The Notre Dame AD and his little crusade here over the last few days has been really interesting to follow. And
geez, phrasing, Ty.
Yeah.
Crusade.
Thank you. I didn't mean it that way. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
What keeps resonating with me, what keeps bouncing around in my head is what's the end game here? What is the point of this? If the point is not just to complain openly and to express dissatisfaction with the process, what is it that they are really going for? And that's where I think had a little bit of a hard time. To me, it comes across as a brushback pitch towards the ACC. And it's probably driven mostly from emotion than anything. But if their goal here is not to outright leave the ACC and to not outright put the ACC in some sort of business bind, the only way that I can interpret this is some sort of brushback, that everything Pete Bavacqua is saying is ultimately intended for an audience of one, whether that's Jim Phillips, whether that's the broader governing structure of the ACC. That to me is the only way this makes sense. There's probably also a point to be made that he is trying to be the squeaky wheel this time around so that if it comes to this a year from now, the playoff committee, I guess depends who's on it, would think twice about leaving Notre Dame out again. None of those seem like great end games to me. So I'm just as curious as you are, and I would agree that it's not the best optics. I also don't think Notre Dame gives a rip about optics. I think Notre Dame for a long time, and this is why a lot of people haven't liked Notre Dame in the past, they tend to operate on the golden rule, i.e. whoever has the gold makes the rules. And in this case, they've got the fan base. He cited some of those stats when he was given his presser yesterday that only 23% of the time ACC stadiums sell out, whereas when Notre Dame is playing, it's 90% of the time. He is very much trying to, I think, put his finger on the scale and let people know how big of a business partner they are. None of it is good, and it only adds, I think, to the toxic nature of what this whole playoff thing has become. But where it goes next, I think, is what's most interesting. Is this going to be the last we hear of it? Will there be any kind of like whispers of lawsuits or anything like? I'm not rooting for that, but I'm just curious to see if there is a next step to any of this, or if it just is sort of like a hissy fit in the moment. I honestly don't know.
Yeah, I'm curious myself on that. With the ACC piece of it, it's kind of they're in this position though. It's the want your cake and eat it too, because they're not a football member, right?
No.
They're an ACC sort of member when it comes to the other sports. I think that doesn't help their case, right? And it's like you're in the ACC, you're not in the Big Ten, right? Like the ACC is like the poster child of conference dysfunction right now. I mean, need I remind you, Manny Diaz at 7-5 got into the ACC title game with like losing some, non-conference games that just, it was like they should never have gotten themselves in that situation in the first place. The PR push as it was, I get why they were aggrieved with that. I mean, to be honest, I think they probably have a stronger case to poke at Alabama. But, I don't know if they think that does them any good. I don't think I think what's different, and, and this, I don't know if this is I don't want to hijack the conversation at this point, but I think people see this in conspiracy theories of, okay, what's going on with the CFP? They obviously, it's run by ESPN. ESPN's by far its biggest partner is Greg Sankey in the SEC, right? Like Stu and I have had this disagreement on it. He was like, like you see that, oh yeah, there's deals with the ACC and they have the ACC network. I'm like, yeah, but those are different.
Totally
it
different.
Ain't the SEC. And until you kind of come to terms with maybe that, people can say, oh, if you really want ratings, you'll stick Notre Dame in there.
Right.
That could be, I mean, it wasn't like, but not at the expense of your cash cow, your biggest cash cow, which is the SEC. And I think that's the part that's hard to separate. Like if it was another team that had the exact same profile and it wasn't an SEC team, I don't think we're talking about this, right? Like BYU dropped, and to me that's the discussion. I get it that Bavacqua has frustrations with the ACC and how it played out, but I feel like there's like it's a different discussion. I'm not saying it isn't one they need to have,
right?
But that's the one that's I feel like the ACC piece of this is the one that really has taken over. And I think if I was Alabama, I'd be like, hey, thanks for doing that.
Let's transition from one potentially petty hissy fit to another, because Lane Kiffin is the new coach of LSU. That's a pro transition.
That was good,
Tyler.
Dan.
You can write that one down.
Yeah.
Petty hissy fit just because of the statement he released. And, this story has been covered from what seems every conceivable angle, right? You have people at the airport. You have, people talking about what happened in meetings and saying that, like, no, we didn't want him to stay from a player perspective. So we've got it from all sorts of different angles. I'm wondering, because you've covered him for a long time. You've known him for a long time. I know that you've talked about how, like, he's just maybe a bad breaker-upper. He's just bad at delivering bad news to people, and that's probably true. That seems true. Is there something we don't know about Lane Kiffin, I guess more broadly speaking, that better informs why he made this move, when he made this move? I know there's talk of calendar stuff, and you don't really have a choice in terms of when you can make a move like this. But is there something that people don't fully understand about Lane Kiffin?
No, I think the people who've been paying attention the longest know who Lane Kiffin is.
Right.
I think it's the ones who kind of got sucked into, oh, he's doing hot yoga now.
Played the yoga card. Brian Kelly tried the yoga card. Yeah.
The yoga people don't like him.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I think that's the piece of it. Yes. I mean,
right.
Like if he's good with Feinbaum, Feinbaum, like I feel like the best two areas for Lane Kiffin are Twitter, where he's not really talking, he's typing, and he's the foil across Feinbaum. Beyond that, I think, the people I talk to are a lot of people who've known him and worked with him for a long time. And they're like, if anybody thinks Lane's changed, Lane's skinnier now. That's about it, right? But he's still the same guy. And you could kind of see it if you didn't learn from it. Like, look at the players' comments. And these weren't just like random dudes. These were like the best players on the team were like, yeah, that's not how that went, Lane. The fact that you went to Twitter and posted that, and all the players called BS, kind of tells you a lot. Then also, it's like you could juxtapose. You like Penn State more than Notre Dame, right? Ty?
No, other way.
Other way most of the time.
Okay.
It depends on the year,
so
honestly.
I was gonna have a sloppy transition, but like Ty's new head coach in State College, his exit is he spends a bunch of of his money to put a thank you note in like the Des Moines Register or whatever to Iowa State fans. Lane's parting shot is my Instagram is now full with all these old DMs he sent to college students, or whatever. And it's just like, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a piece of Lane that feels like he just cannot help himself, and it's always going to be about Lane, right? And you saw that right till the end. Right. I don't know if he's ever going to win a national title at LSU. I think he's probably better positioned to win one at LSU than he is at Ole Miss, just because, except for Brian Kelly, all the coaches who've been there in the last 25 years have actually won one. And at Ole Miss, you can have good teams. I don't know if you can sustain greatness there. Where at LSU, you can. Now, the question's going to be, can Lane control himself and there's going to be a juggling act right now, or a balancing act to do that. And I don't know how it's going to be, because there's a lot of strong forces around that program that are way different than what he's had. Because remember, here's him as a head coach, goes to the Raiders, obviously didn't go well. Went to Tennessee, had a lot of people on that staff, including his dad, who knew him very well. It was as turbulent as could be. There was some good and some bad, a lot of embarrassing things, and he left. And then he went to USC, where the sanctions hit. But again, he had people around there who knew him well. Monty was there, Ogeron was there. And I think that, I don't want to say there were guardrails, but it didn't go great there either, obviously, because he got fired on the tarmac. Then he's at Alabama, where he's kind of been humbled to some extent. Saban ends up firing him right before the national title game, because he's got the, kind of trying to juggle the FAU piece of it. So at FAU, I think it's just on a different stage. At Ole Miss, again, I think there was some people around him, but it wasn't quite like this. Now you're going into the deep end of the pool at LSU. And there's a lot of people pulling in different directions, and it's really political. And I'm fascinated to see how this goes. Is there a revenge thing for him, by the way?
Is this a revenge thing for Lane? That like things have gone so poorly at places like USC and the Raiders and Tennessee. Is he the kind of guy who is taking this job to say, I got all the way back. I told you, you were the wrong one. I am the right one. Do you think that's something that fuels him?
No, because if that was the case, he would have tried to win the national title at Ole Miss, a place nobody's ever done it.
Yeah, but think about that. There's no glory in the way that there would be like at LSU. That it's doing it at a huge place.
Yeah, but if you do it at LSU, you just did what Les Miles, Ed Ogeron, and Nick Saban did. You do it at Ole Miss, nobody's done it at Ole Miss. And on top of it, what you ended up doing is you quit on the team when they were in the playoff and going to host a playoff game. Like, there's no honor in that, right? But I don't think there's...
I mean, LSU hasn't hired a coach like that since Brian Kelly, right? Prepared to quit on a potential playoff team? Continue.
How about that? Yeah, I mean, that was not to give Brian Kelly a ton of credit,
Right.
but that wasn't the same as this.
No.
Like, they had a chance to make the playoff. This team was going to host a playoff game,
Right.
whether he's there or not. And I think that I just don't think how Lane is wired. It's not about revenge. I just think everything is about Lane. I mean, he's the only guy of some stature who tweets as much as he does and tweets like the most random things about that are like circularly related to him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's madness. Like, I have a coach I talked to who worked with him a long while ago, and he was like, I don't understand why he's on Twitter so much. What head coach has time to be doing all this stuff?
Right.
Like, it's just like Lane cannot help himself. Lane is always all about Lane, period. Now, he can go on a show and bring a running back on and say all this great stuff or whatever, but it's all ultimately about framing about Lane and everything else like that.
Bruce, from the outside, this was like a soap opera in college football. Will he go to LSU? Will he stay at Ole Miss? Might he go to Florida? Are there other suitors out there? You hear a lot about mystery teams. I've been reading about mystery teams, I feel like, for the last 2 months or so. In your mind, being so you're much closer to this than Dan and I, at what point to you was it a certainty that, oh yeah, he's going to go to LSU? Like, never mind the noise. This is where this guy is going. Everybody, whether they know it for sure or not, it's about to be very real that this is the only place he's going to end up.
It was maybe almost a week earlier before, and somebody I talked to who's really close to Lane and knows him well basically was like, this is what's going to happen. Now, like, there's a chance Lane could back out of it, but it made it sound like this is what's going to happen. And I believe that. Because a lot of the other things that this person and a few other people have told me have gone exactly this way.
Interesting.
So, I don't know. Like, we went on our big noon show. It was the same day as Ohio State, Michigan. And I would have been stunned from based on what I heard that morning on the LSU side if Lane Kiffin was not going to be the next head coach at LSU.
Interesting.
Like, it was, I think we reported that LSU was very confident. I mean, it was like they couldn't have, like, I think they would have been shocked if Lane Kiffin decided to stay in Oxford at that point based on everything they'd heard.
We told some people in our community that you were coming on. I put out a call for some questions, and it actually fits perfectly with what you're saying. Were there any other stunners in your book, either coaches that ended up at a place that you didn't expect, guys that you expected to be on the market who ended up staying put? Was there anything in this coaching carousel cycle that surprised you, maybe above some of the other stuff that we already know about?
Yeah, if you had asked me, I don't know, Thanksgiving-ish, maybe a week before Thanksgiving, where's Sean Summerall going to go? I would have said to Auburn, not UF.
Mm-hmm.
That surprised me. And I think it worked out really good for UF, to be honest. I think there was a few other things I was like, that's I would not have guessed Bob Chesney to UCLA just because he's an East Coast guy who's been at small schools and has never been on the West Coast. But you're
Who
UCLA.
Who are you expecting for UCLA?
That's the thing. I mean, if I was UCLA, I would have gone after the guy who kicked our butts early in the year, Jason Eck.
Yeah.
I think Jason Eck's a fantastic coach. I think that, I'm not saying Chesney's not, but like, you saw it with him. He's been on the West Coast. He's a big personality. I think he would engage people. Again, I'm not saying Chesney can't do well at UCLA, but I was like, man, Jason Eck would be a hell of a hire if they
He'd
could
find every underrated lineman, west of Colorado.
Yeah, and you see the players that he's evaluating. I mean, I don't want to say he almost beat Dan's beloved Ducks a couple of years ago, but like he
put a scare into them. Yeah,
he did, and that was at Idaho and he had lost almost all his best players had gone in the portal. It was a new quarterback because the old, all these guys were gone.
Right.
And he gave them so many problems that, like that's one I would have thought they would have gone again.
Could be waiting on Wisconsin, I guess. That job
Yeah,
doesn't
that's his
seem
alma mater,
right.
but I don't think it was that. I don't
Okay.
think it was, again, there's a few other ones that were kind of surprising. I think Penn State landed in a good place with Matt Campbell. It got to the point where not long after they fired James Franklin, I think we had a Friday night game. We're in the studio at Fox, and it's Minnesota and Nebraska. And I remember like I had to do a couple of Fox hits, and one of them was about like, well, you just fired James Franklin because he couldn't beat top 10 teams. And here's Pat Kraft's one of his best friends who's like 0-30 against top 25 teams. And then we have them, and Minnesota just beats the brakes off them. And I feel like on a Friday night game, more people are paying attention than they are if it happened on Saturday because there's other
Right.
games to distract. It was like, oof. So then the search got a little crazy.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Mhm.
Can you stress test my theory that I've been running with for a while? Because and people who listen know that I've been saying this for years on end, but it had been relayed to me 5-6 years ago that if and when the Penn State job came open, it was going to be Matt Rule's to lose. And I think there's a reason everybody had Matt Rule atop their list or in their grouping of initial candidates for it. And so my theory was, well, they were going to go after Rule. Obviously, the case for Matt Rule bottomed out almost instantly. The fans didn't want it. His team didn't play well. His quarterback got hurt. He ends up signing an extension. So that was kind of dead before it even got started. But then my theory was, all right, it's Rule. Then they're going to go out after the biggest possible names, the names that are going to move message boards, the names that are going to get people excited. They didn't get any of those guys. And then after that, it was a big shrug. All right. They ended up apparently going after Kalani Sitake. That didn't work. They ended up with Matt Campbell, who basically fell off the back of a truck to him, which I think in hindsight's a very, very good fit and a great hire. But is in your opinion, is that an accurate depiction of what
Yes.
their plan looked like to try and hire a new guy?
Yeah, I think you summed it up in 90 seconds or whatever that was. Yes, I would back that.
Go ahead, Dan.
All right. Fair enough. When you look around at some of the other hires, it's sort of all over the place, right? There's, G5 guys on the move, and, Ryan Silverfield, you mentioned at Florida with John Sumrall. Will Stein and Tosh Lupoy are both now off of the Oregon staff, but going to stay on for the playoff. Brian Hartline is at USF, but staying on for the playoff. What was your reaction to some of those hires to big places, obviously in Kentucky, Cal, and USF among the bigger G5 places? Were any of those shockers? How do you evaluate those processes?
Let me go with like some of the assistants in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think Tosh at Cal will be interesting. Tosh is, if you said to me, which head coach fit is the most kind of crystal ball-ish, it's, like Tosh feels in that spirit.
Right.
He's going to be a recruiting demon. He loves the place. It wasn't just like he played there and coached there. His dad was a GA there. That's an interesting hire. Like, he's learned under some really good people. I'm curious to see how he does there. It's kind of I don't say it was an obvious hire, but it was pretty much one, when we do our search stories, it was like, oh yeah, I could definitely see that's the leader, for that. Hartline will be interesting because he's got a lot of ties in South Florida. He obviously recruited a bunch of good receivers, most notably Jeremiah Smith, played for the Dolphins. I'm interested to see how he does as a head coach. I think for a minute, I was like, when West Virginia was open, when Rich Rod ended up getting it, I was like, that's a spot I could see. Or Kentucky was a spot I could see for him. USF's a good job, and Golish, made it better than it was when he found it. So that one's interesting. Arkansas is a tough one. I like Ryan Silverfield, but and maybe I'm a little, biased by this. I just spent a month seeing his boss just kind of, vomit on TV every Tuesday night.
It all comes back to Hunter Yurachek.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a tough job, you're at Arkansas. They're the only team, I think, since Yurachek's been the AD in the SEC that has not had at least one winning record in SEC play 1 year. He's been there 8 years. It was tough. Chad Morris went from doing a good job at SMU to couldn't win a game in Fayetteville. Sam Pittman wasn't a disaster. He did some good things, had a couple of good years, but I don't know. That was a tough one. Again, I think what's going to be interesting with Silverfield is he did well at Memphis, and I think he's a smart guy. But you have somebody with no SEC experience going in there, right? And that is a snake pit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see on that one. There was a few other hires that were like, I think Memphis made a really good hire replacing him with Charles Huff. Charles
Right.
Huff's really good. Charles Huff wouldn't have been surprised if he was the Virginia Tech head coach. I get it why they hired James Franklin. And but there's, like he's, I think, a really good coach. There's a few of them in there. I'm interested to see how Eric Morris does at Oklahoma State. He's an old Leach guy. I've known him since he was a player for Leach, and I think Eric's smart. I think Eric's an elite evaluator. I mean, I've seen, been in the room where he's stood on the table for guys. He stood on the table for Baker Mayfield
Yeah.
and Pullman when they didn't offer him. God, I always blank on this kid. It's like Tyler Brugman, I think was the one. He was a
Okay.
4-star quarterback from Arizona, who they ended up offering first, and it was like he wanted Baker, and he had Cam Ward at Incarnate Word, and he obviously was the first one to go from a tier outside, at FBS level. So I think he could do well at Oklahoma State where they have resources. There was one other hire. The one hire that's one that to me is I don't know, that I don't feel like it sit great was Washington State. Has been, those players and that fan base has been through a lot over the last like 6 or 7 years. You go back to, one of the, tragedy with a quarterback who, back, it was a really sad story. You had a couple other tragedies with the players. You have Rolovich going in there, and then what happened with him, and he gets fired, and it's controversial. And then I thought Jake Dickert did a really good job. And then Dickert leaves right before the Holiday Bowl last year, and they're really fragmented or whatever. And then they play their ass off. They give Syracuse a game, and then Jimmy Rogers gets the job. And you think there's going to be some stability there. He's coming from the FCS, from a really good school, and he's not even there a year, and
Right.
he leaves. And they're in a bowl game again, and that just kind of sucks for, like, I feel like those players. I get it, people are just kind of feel like loyalty is really cliche and everything, but like they don't even have an AD.
Right. Their AD left for Washington, and they lost their conference in that process as well. Yeah.
Oh my, yeah. Like Clay McGuire is an old Leach guy who was the O-line coach. The year basically the conference situation fell apart for them, right?
Right.
And so, and they were a pretty good team. Like they were not an awful team when Dickert had it there. Like they were a little dangerous. They gave people, they won some games. And I just remember him telling me some story about, they got off to a pretty fast start, and then they had a bye week. And the bye week, it felt like that was the week. Oh my God, we're like refugees right now. We have no home. We're not a Pac-10 school anymore. We're not a Pac-12 school anymore. And it was like after that, like every week, it was a different position group that kind of fell apart. And I remember like that really resonated with me, of just like what that lack of identity can do to a program. And I have no idea if there's any kids who were there from the start of like all of this, between the player tragedies and, and the conference bailing out, but just like, man, that the fans I know are the fans, because I know they're loyal, because we did a bunch of Swing Your Store stuff up there, and I really feel for the fans on that, because they've been through it. I know there's some of them probably didn't like Jimmy Rogers, the way he handled the quarterback situation, in the first month. Maybe he picked the wrong guy, and then they found a way to get. I mean, look, they could have beat. This is the crazy thing with them. They could have beat Ole Miss. They had them on the ropes. Could have beat James Madison, as well as Virginia. They probably should have won 2 of those 3 games. So I was kind of like, when I saw that, especially as quickly as he was leaving, it was like, oh, Matt Campbell's going to do his player meeting, and now right after that, Jimmy Rogers doing his player meeting. He's getting the heck out, and he's going to Ames.
They announced Jimmy Rogers at Iowa State before Penn State announced Matt Campbell. They wasted no time.
Is there? I was just wondering, along with what Ty is saying, is there new calculus in the way like coaches are weighing opportunities in 2025, 26 with, you lose a coach and you're going to lose a bunch of players to the portal. So then the coach immediately has to either bring guys in the portal or convince guys to come out of the portal. You have to hire a bigger staff than you've ever had to hire as a head coach if you're going to one of these major places. And we've seen like reported interest in like huge coaching names across the sport who've just all kind of, for the most part, ignored that interest or politely declined that interest. And the most recent one was like Kalani Sitake at BYU. But we've seen like Kalen DeBoer and Dan Lanning and Josh Heupel, all these guys. What's the calculus in making decisions today versus, 10 years ago?
I think they know that if I don't get it going here quick, I'm going to be on the hot seat. They'll pay a big buyout. They'll get rid of me. And I also think because players are movable, right? We saw this, like this Cignetti Indiana thing has been an amazing story, but it's also put everybody on the clock because you're like, that guy wanted a program that was 3-9. He took a bunch of his players. It was different than what you could do in 2006 or something. You can't pluck off your old roster. I think that changes things. And so it also honestly changed the calculus in some of the hiring process where, I talked to several different people who were involved in coaching searches, like, can he bring players?
Right.
Like, that was never a thing before. Now it's a real thing. And so I think all that stuff factors into it. You hear a lot about the calendar and everything, but like that also, honestly made, to go back to Lane Kiffin situation for a second, that also made that more complicated. It was like, oh yeah, do we really, like I have a good friend who covers NFL and he was like, I think they should have just let him coach. And I was like, yeah, he would have recruited every player he wanted. Every player he off that. And the guy was like, you don't think he did that already? And I'm like, no, he probably did. But I think it's a little more different when you have the job and it's more transparent and it's just like any pretense is out the window.
What is the reaction in the coaching community? Obviously, because you are in this world all year long. You mentioned Curt Cignetti. Curt Cignetti is a unicorn in this sport in that, as you mentioned, as we all know now, as the number one team in the college football playoff, he went to a place that is the losingest place in the Big Ten and turned them into the most dangerous team in the conference in less than 2 years, right? That he wins the Big Ten title over a recruiting and winning juggernaut in Ohio State. Is the reaction in the coaching community like, who the hell is this guy? Like, is there confusion? Is there like, yeah, we knew this guy was a killer the whole time and somebody just figured it out? Like, what was his reputation going in? Are coaches, ADs, GA, whoever, are people shocked at this, or were they like everybody else just finally caught up?
I think they're impressed by it. It depends on the guys who know him. Like Norm Chow, who I still keep in touch with because we live not that far apart. He was Norm Chow's tight ends coach at NC State when Chow was the offensive coordinator, and they had Phillip Rivers. Right. In the news now, right? So, like that was back in the day, and he was like, yeah, he was always really. You talk to people, he was always really smart. That's what they would always say. I think what again, son of a coach. There's a person that I talked to who made a great comparison with him once, and he was like, because I said, do you think it's a little contrived? The Google me stuff and right. Different things he will say. And this person was like, he reminds me a lot of Jim Harbaugh in that he will say some crazy stuff, but it's authentic, and players will go to battle for that because, oh man, he's got our back. And right. I think that was when I heard that, I was like, yeah, that there's something there to that. And then the thing that doesn't get said enough is he has to be and he was a recruiting coordinator for a long time, but he has to be a brilliant evaluator, not just of players. When you look, Bryant Haynes, the defensive coordinator, I mean, I don't know if I've had more than 2 sentences of conversation with him. It's not like I know him particularly well, but the job that guy's done, like he should win the Broyles Award this year. I mean, there's other guys who've done a really good job too, but I mean, Dan, your team had only given up 1 sack, and then they went in there and
Destroyed.
And Dante Moore was on his back a half dozen times. Julian Sayin
They
had
scored
played
13
pretty
offensive
flawless
points against Indiana. Oregon did 13 offensive. It was
Yeah.
a wild performance. It was great.
At their place, no
At their
less,
place.
right? And then Julian Sayin humming along or whatever, they sack him 5 times. Just like the offense coordinator, Mike Shanahan, old Wannstedt guy, not even old. I mean, these guys are young guys, but he has put together a really, really good staff. I think he evaluated really well on both player and coach. And so it's an amazing story. Like it's already, like Stu once brought up the because he's a Northwestern guy, brought up the Gary Barnett year or whatever. And I was like, yeah, this is not that.
No.
I mean, like, because you were not, you were a top 10 team that year, or they were a top 10 team, but they didn't just beat, they have the 2 most impressive wins of anybody this year.
They suffocated 2 top 5 teams.
And
Away from
neither
home.
one was in Bloomington, by the way. Yeah,
Right,
one
away
was in
from home.
Indiana, but
Yeah.
yeah. So, man, hats off to him, because they were really good last year, but they weren't this good.
Right.
And now they're different. They're more mature. They're better in the trenches. I mean, it's an amazing story. And, we'll see. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they won the national title.
No.
But, whoever gets to write his leadership book is going to be very happy.
It's great.
Bruce, I have a 2-part question just about the coaching carousel as a whole. This cycle had been billed as one of the craziest that any of us would ever see. And certainly there was a lot of movement. There were a bunch of openings, right? How did it compare to previous cycles in your estimation? Was it as crazy as it had been billed as, I guess, in the run-up to it? Or did it just end up going sort of the way that others have gone, and it kind of comes in very quickly and then it's over before you know it? Like, how does it compare relative to expectations?
It's a good way you frame that. I think it's crazy, but it was mostly crazy because of the Lane piece of
Right.
it, and because Lane does everything so public and on social media. A couple of years ago, wasn't that long ago, it was probably 4 years ago. I remember this kind of sequence. Over the weekend, I remember getting a tip that Lane Kiffin, I'll get Lane Kiffin on the head, that Lincoln Riley might be in play at USC, right? And then all of a sudden it was like he's telling people at Oklahoma this is what's going on and everything. He goes, so like the next day, I think there's a introduction at the Coliseum, and I remember going over there with Leinart, and it's me, Leinert's wife, and Leinert's son Cole, who's like now going to go play quarterback at SMU. It's not like he's like a 10-year-old. And so we're in the car, and I'm in the back, and I remember I'm on the phone with Pete Sampson, our Notre Dame writer, and I told him, somebody I trust said, hey, they're offering the job, and they being LSU, to Brian Kelly. And so we are like in the ride over to the Coliseum, we are posting a story about that Brian Kelly's getting offered the LSU job. And that's the next day. That's like the day of. And then, so in a span of like 3 days, I remember this, like Lincoln Riley's agent at the time was Brian Kelly's agent, who at the time also was Sonny Dykes' agent. So you had those 3 things happen in a row. It was like, and I remember, like, I know LSU was after USC, maybe TCU was before it, somewhere in that. But you had, I think, the 2 like whoa jolts of Lincoln going to USC and Brian Kelly going where? Like that,
Right.
To me was much more of a shock than Lane's leaving. I don't think in the end, if I asked you guys and put down like a scorecard or going, okay, these are the jobs that are coming open, I don't think either one of you would have been that shocked that Matt Campbell ended up at Penn State.
No.
Right? And I don't think either one of you would have been shocked that Lane Kiffin ended up at LSU. Yeah,
No.
Florida or LSU or whatever.
He flirted with
like
Auburn, and LSU's bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the end, I don't think those were like, they weren't as shocking as what happened, whatever it was, 4 years ago. Right. And I'm sure there was some other pieces in that like, I think that was the same year that like, I want to say Fickle went to Wisconsin. I mean,
I
that
think
wasn't his,
Lanning to Oregon was that year too, right? Didn't Lanning and Lincoln start the same year?
yeah, I think that would be right.
Yeah.
So, and that was a weird one, just in that there was some weird stuff with how that unfolded with Georgia. And I mean, I don't remember the specifics. I don't want to just kind of like remember some of the wrong stuff with Lanning,
Right.
but yeah, that was another one that folded into that. So we've definitely had some nutty coaching cycles, and to be honest, like this isn't even the craziest Lane coaching story. I mean,
Fair.
like Lane to USC is crazier than Lane to LSU.
Yes.
Right.
After a year.
You bring up Lincoln. I'll ask you about it because he was sort of the topic du jour for a while. There was smoke around him being a mystery candidate here or there or really everywhere. Was any of that believable to you?
It was not. I mean, it was doubtful to me. Just here's what I think I know. Again, I say I think I know.
Sure.
I think Lincoln's family loves it out here in Southern California. I don't, and I think Lincoln's a little different than some. Like I'm not trying to portray other coaches as bad parents and Lincoln as something so different from. But like, I think he has awareness of like, my family loves it out here. I got it pretty good. I don't know if Lincoln wants to be in a fishbowl of a small college town where everybody's all over your business. He was kind of had that to some degree in Norman. It's worse in a lot of other places, I believe. And I don't think he wants that existence, And he's also making a fortune. He has they ended up signing the number one ranked recruiting class. I don't know if he can win a national title here. I don't know if he could win a national title. You pick the place, but like, I think all things being equal, I think it would have surprised me if he would have gone to Penn State or if he would have gone to Gainesville. I just think after, their experience here, I don't think that was something that he or they probably would have really wanted. Again, no one's told me that, but like, that's my gut on this.
Do you believe that the coaching carousel is done spinning? Or are there other things hanging out there with the NFL, with God knows what? It feels like every offseason we have some new wrinkle that nobody saw coming. We're recording this December the 10th. Are we done?
Right before you said that, I looked down at my little calendar. I was like, it's only December 10th. We're never done at that point.
Exactly,
Correct.
right?
So no, there's going to be something that's going to happen that'll be seismic, I think. I don't know what it is.
Okay.
Like people have like rumored about Sark and there's been pushback on that.
Right.
I don't, like there'll be other things that'll happen, but I don't think you're talking about like the Coastal Carolina job is not going to create this
No
big
disrespect
domino effect
to the Chanticleers,
Right.
but yeah.
No disrespect to them or Missouri State or whatever else is going to fall. But like, there'll be, something, right? Like, I mean, all this, there's a lot of stuff that's happened. We didn't even like mention like Pat Fitzgerald is, coaching.
Right. I was going to ask. Yeah.
So there's just a lot of, I don't know, it's still kind of early and I don't know who's movable for the NFL, but there may be somebody.
So, not to give away your game because this is an annual column, but based on what happened this season with head coaches, with assistant coaches, who are the names that have started bubbling up for the future? We've seen some of these names repeatedly in your like Glenn Schumann's name comes up a bunch, right? That when you have a defense as good as he's had at Georgia, you're just going to get attention. Are there any new names that you feel like are bubbling up in the coaching community?
I mean, there's some guys that started to get a little bit of traction around, but I don't know. I feel like that pool has been tapped out, pretty good. Like you mentioned Will Stein, he was, I think, going to be kind of choosy, Tosh made sense that I think more coordinators got hired, in the last couple of weeks than I think we expected them to. Tosh to Cal, once that job came open, I was like, okay, I totally see that.
Right.
Heartline, it had to be a pretty good situation. I think that was a good situation. And then you start looking around, like a lot of the coordinators that you would think would be, like look at who's up for the Broyles list, except for Bryant Haynes. It's a lot of, it seems like it's a lot of old, it's Mike Bobo. It's more established older guys. And I think sometimes those are guys who usually aren't getting a first time head coaching job. So, again, I think that we'll see what comes out of like the playoff run of who ends up being guys people look at. But I also think what's added to this is, again, a little of the Signetti piece of this, and I'll put this on him, is you have some smaller school guys who are now people are like, oh, I see what's going on with Willie Fritz. You see what Houston was pretty good. And that guy wins wherever he goes. So Mike Jacobs, like we got asked to do, I don't want to say this was a dumb thing because it actually was smart. I just didn't think of it. It was like, who would be like kind of like one of the guys to watch? And I remember we got Jason Kirk. I think you guys know who that is, right? So he had had me and Chris Vanini, I forget who else, submit names, and the guy I submitted was like the coach at Mercer. Well, he ain't the coach at Mercer anymore. He just got the Toledo job. As he coached at a Notre Dame, but not the Notre Dame that we're talking about, a Notre Dame that doesn't even exist anymore. He was an assistant at. I think you're seeing more of that path, whether it's Bob Chesney, like there's more of those guys now getting interest because people are like, oh yeah, that guy's a good coach, and he's learned when nobody was really paying attention at places, and maybe made mistakes when nobody was paying attention, as opposed to like the guys who were on the move and then either had a bad year or took a step back, like, because that can definitely happen when you're a coordinator. I mean, Tim Banks just got fired at Tennessee a year ago. He had the number 5 defense in the country, right? And they lose 2 NFL D linemen and their best corner to injury. And, they're probably in the 60s and he gets fired. Like it's just kind of like that's that world when they're paying you, $1.5, $2.5 million to be a coordinator.
Final question. What is something that people should be keeping in mind when they are paying attention to this season, this coaching season, or any coaching season, right? Like people are like, why would he go to here? Why would he stay? What, like, is it all just like how happy your family is? Is it all just how well of a like relationship you have with your boss? Like people are very quick to sort of like do the binary. Is this job better than this job? In my opinion, what gets, ignored, or what is something that people are just going to have no idea about that what goes into these decisions?
I really think it's a one size fits all. It's like, it's not one size fits all.
Oh, okay.
I think everybody has their own different rationale for what they want, what they think works for them. I think that people have seen, this may not have worked there, but it can, it's interesting. You look at like Jim Mora is back, to Colorado State. He did an amazing job at UConn, right? And I think that people are out there going, okay, what's going to work here? And if it doesn't, we're going to have to pay the money to get rid of this guy or whatever. But I don't think it's like, is my family happiest? Like if you go back to Kiffin for a second, it sure seemed like the Kiffin group, him, his brother's family, his ex-wife is there, his kids. Seemed like everything was pretty good. Doesn't mean it can't get better in Baton Rouge, but you are, like changing the equation on that. And I just think that at the end of the day, most of these guys got in to be football coaches. And I think the hardest thing is if you're the coach's family, coach's wife, you just don't know what you're getting into. Right.
Chris Peterson's done, by the way.
Yes. I can't tell you how many times I get asked by
I mean, you sit next to him, so you would know.
Oh, it's so funny because like he's just like he'll like roll his eyes and be like, "What now?" And I'm like, "Yeah, my Stanford buddies think you're interested in that." And I don't want to do his facial expressions on some of these. I've got a few of them now, but he's an interesting guy to work with because like on one hand, he's definitely the smartest football guy I've ever talked to. Like he has pretty much the answers almost to everything you could ever wonder about or get into a conversation about.
Right.
But also I think he's self-aware enough to go, yeah, I'm not going back to being in that world because it's not.
He's also not even like in a different way.
What's that?
Not even like a different way. I mean, I think it was your story where you talked about he would be more likely to take like the receiver's job at UC Davis than a major head coaching job, something like that.
Yeah, I don't think at this stage of his life, that's him.
I think he should show up after spring ball at was it Pete Davis, the defensive line sort of consultant? You should just, is that his name? I apologize if I got it wrong. The LSU defensive line guru.
Oh, no, not Davis. He's like 88 years old.
Right. I remember. And he would just come in and be like, this is what's wrong.
He's an old Saban guy, yeah. I don't know if people by the flip side of that, I don't know if a lot of the coaches love that, where like, we stopped doing that stuff like 18 years ago.
Okay.
And this is why. But I think where he's really good is he's a good resource to a lot of coaches. And it's not just like, I think it's less about the X and O's and more like the managing and the balance.
Just give me a call. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I hope he doesn't leave Fox just because feel like we're very spoiled to have him.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. So
I remember
if somebody decides to pry him away, they better have like a donuts deal for him because he has like a sweet tooth of
I remember
good intel.
I remember you coming on this show a couple of years ago, and I forget why we brought up Chris Peterson, but you were like, what people don't know about Chris Peterson, A, he's probably not going to take another job. B, he's really freaking funny. People don't realize how funny of a guy this guy is.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff I got to keep in there. The thing I will say though is the sweet tooth thing this year has been interesting to see. It's just like, I think he's the only person, like, he has one thing in common with Andy Staples, and it's this. I've each asked the question of, if it was for charity, how much of that do you think you could eat?
And what was his answer? How many glazed donuts could he pound?
It wasn't the glazed donuts. There's, the sidecar donut place.
Sure, of course.
So every Saturday they have like this, like, it's almost a coffin-sized box of different. And I was like, man, you just can't stop. And it's like half them are half eaten because he's sampling. So.
Oh man, that's good intel though. If a coach wants to really like sell him, have a donut wall in his office constantly being refilled, and it's probably going to be terrible for your team. But it's a good bit of advice.
Coaches usually have worse vices than that. But yes, that and the acai bowls. So although he's, I think he refers to him as, he doesn't know how to pronounce it, so it sounds like a former UCLA tight end who transferred from Michigan there.
Yeah, I like that.
Wonderful. His name is Bruce Feldman. You can find his fine work over at Fox Sports as well as over at The Athletic, where he also does a podcast called The Audible. Bruce, keep up the good work. It is a pleasure, as always, to catch up with you. You make us smarter, and we'll have to do it again sometime soon.
I appreciate it, guys. Always a pleasure. Ty, just know that you have been a great resource to The Audible with your market awareness. And
that's true.
And Dan, I tell everybody that it ever comes up, like, I had the best meal I've ever had.
Whoa!
The best pizza I've ever had, by far the best salad and croutons I've ever had.
Man.
So
anytime you're in town. Northwestern, look, they're a bowl team. I think they're a bowl team. Yeah, they are. The things are growing. There's a new stadium this year to come check out. I'm not far from there. Anytime you are vaguely in Chicagoland, come through.
I will definitely take you up on that.
All right, there we go again. Bruce Feldman. Check him out over at Fox Sports, The Athletic. Check out the Audible podcast, which he does with our friends Stuart Mandel and Ralph Russo. They're always good to have Bruce back on. I think we've told the story more times than I could count at this point. But back when we were first starting out, in the year of our Lord, 2008, which I don't like to say that much because it makes me feel old. But Bruce is one of the very first bona fide reporters that we emailed at the time. He was, I think, still with ESPN, and got back to us right away, was more than generous with his time. And, he's one of our oldest friends now over the course of however many seasons it's been, 18 seasons we've been doing this show. Bruce has been with us in some way, shape, or form the entirety of the run of the show, and we're immensely grateful for that. So it's great to catch up with him.
And I've repaid all of his generosity and time with elite Caesar salad, which is what the gentlemanly thing to do is, as we've all known our entire lives. Caesar salad is what is the proper way to say thank you. So I'm doing my part. Yeah, Bruce is the best. Great to have him on. Great to get his insight into all the Notre Dame weirdness and Lane Kiffin and the coaching carousel and all sorts of different topics. And I guess Chris Peterson's donut habits. Breaking news.
Yeah.
Allegedly, like Chris Peterson is going to sue you and Bruce for disparaging his diet. I would say moderate with your donut intake, because I have found if you get a taste for donuts, Ty, in my own personal experience, that's the quickest way to pack it on. Donuts are the most, donuts and maybe milkshakes.
Yeah.
If you're really looking to like make weight for something, I don't know what you personally would need to do to make weight. I would say just stop by and grab some crullers or something.
If you're to make weight,
Yes.
stop eating the crawlers. But if you're looking to add on weight, then yeah.
Yeah, if you're looking to bulk up for whatever reason, I think donuts are arguably the most efficient way to gain weight.
Nothing like a few hollow calories among friends, right?
Well, I guess Chris Peterson was always about efficiency, right? As an offensive play caller, an offensive mind, balanced offense. So again, I respect it. I had a donut wall at my wedding.
You did. You were very adamant about that.
I was adamant. I am not a cake person. I'm glad we didn't do cake. We had a cookie brownie type table as well, but we had the donut wall, and I think it was a big success.
All right. Before we get the fine people out of here, 3 p.m. this Saturday on CBS. It is Army at 6-5. It is Navy at 9-2. Navy, of course, had a nice run through the American. Almost got into that American championship game. They finished 7-1. Army finished 4-4 in conference. Again, just to remind people, and this was new as of last year, that both Army and Navy were in the same conference. And at least for a moment in time a year ago, we thought maybe they could be playing on back-to-back weeks. One in the conference championship, another in this game, the storied game that they play in week 16 of every college football season. I know you and I have mused about when they play this game or if they should play this game now, given the oddities that could occur with them both being in the same conference, a conference championship, and blah, blah, blah. That's neither here nor there. We've got a game on our hands this weekend between Army and Navy. Navy is favored by 6 points. The over-under is 38.5 in true Army-Navy fashion. Do you have a lean, Dan Rubenstein?
Okay. I'm going Army because my lean was Navy. And every time I think one of these teams is the clear better team, like I do with Navy at their best, the other team wins. So Army's season hasn't been extraordinary, but they really haven't been competitive in only one of their games. They've lost a bunch of one-score games when they've lost. They lost by 1 to Tulsa, lost by a touchdown to Tulane, playoff team Tulane.
Yeah.
ECU was not great, but it was on the road, whatever. They lost by a touchdown to North Texas. And even the Tarleton State loss to open the season. Tarleton State's a good team.
They are. They're playing this week in the FCS playoffs.
Now, should Army lose to Tarleton State? Probably not. I grant you that. But they turned around and beat Kansas State, so they bounced back pretty quickly. They won 3 out of 4 to finish out the year. They don't do anything extraordinarily well, but they play very disciplined. They don't commit penalties, and their turnover margin is extraordinary. So I'm going Army in the upset here. What about you?
I was going back through, I was looking at this matchup over the course of time. And most of the recent, I say most of, in air quotes, most of the recent results, when there's a blowout, it's a blowout on the Army side.
Right.
And we saw last year, they won by like 18 points. Now, different team, different players this year, of course, and that was one of the talking points in the run-up to the season. But I'm always very hesitant to take the favorite in this game. I always like to take the points, not just because of our whole thing about throwing out the records and rivalry or anything like that. But this is a game that just there's a lot more attached to it than just your standard run-of-the-mill college football rivalry. So my inclination, I'm with you on that front. I'm inclined to say Army. Never in the history of this game is Navy looking past it, but I do wonder if there is just very mildly any kind of letdown effect, given the fact that they were kind of in the American running up until the final week. Didn't work out.
Think so.
I'm not going to stake any claim on that, but I'm going to go with Army plus the 6 as well. This is just always, for whatever reason, to me, I feel like I have gotten myself into trouble every time I have taken the favorite. So I'm going to go underdog plus the points and historic rivalry. Let's go Cadets.
This is in, what'd you say, Baltimore this year?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Can't wait. We'll watch.
All righty. Big thanks again to Bruce Feldman, our guest of honor today. for stopping on by, giving us some of his wisdom on the coaching search and beyond. As I mentioned on our last episode, I'm going to talk through some of the finer details of the Penn State coaching search with our friend Matt Fortuna. And on the next episode, I'm excited about that one because I've got a bunch of questions for him. Matt is also a PA guy who went to Penn State. We have a lot in common. So
near you? Did he grow up near you in Pennsylvania?
I think he grew up in the northeastern part of the state, so not far from me.
So what's in the northeastern part of Pennsylvania?
Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, those types of places. I'll have to ask Matt exactly where he's from. He told me, and it's escaping me exactly where he grew up. But he and I have a lot in common, which is why I'm
What's
excited
the lake
to bring
from
him
the
on show.
office? The Scranton area lake?
Lake Wallenpaupack.
Have you spent time on Lake Wallenpaupack?
Not only have I spent time there, I played the baseball team.
You lost your... Okay.
A couple times we played I guess it was Lake Wallenpaupack baseball team.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been up that way many, many times.
Would people remember you up there from your baseball career?
Would they remember me from my baseball career?
Like if you strolled into a sandwich shop
No.
up in that area, it would be like, oh, I remember you.
My
Gritty
lasting
second
impression
baseman.
when we played Lake Wallenpaupack, I believe it was just Lake Wallenpaupack was the name of the team.
Okay.
I was a middle infielder. I was turning a double play. And we had an instance where somebody came in cleats up on me. And this is like a preseason game. And nobody really appreciated it, myself included. And a little bit later on in the game, the same player was running to second base. I, again, was covering second base, hoping to turn a double play, and I threw it right in his chest.
Nice.
On purpose.
I love that.
And I'm not proud of it, but I'm willing enough to admit
Ty's
that I
all
did
about
that.
those unwritten rules.
Yeah. There's more fire in here, I think, than people realize.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that,
Right
Ty.
here.
I think that informs
Got him right here.
a good amount about you.
Yeah,
Okay.
got him.
Good
Got
to
him
know.
right there. So,
Yep.
Anyway, we lost the game, so the last laugh was on the Lake Wallenpaupack side. But outside of that experience of playing the game and Dwight Schrute getting the fake wheel at the company party, not a whole lot else to report.
Okay. Good to know. I appreciate your on-the-ground experience.
The only other bit of housekeeping that I will offer here before we let the fine people go, do stay tuned to your newsletter. Do stay tuned to our social feeds. Do stay tuned to our upcoming episodes. We're going to run Bowl Bingo again. Bowl Bingo last year was open to all. The way Bowl Bingo works is we give you a whole long list of prop bets for the upcoming week of college football games. It's not going to start until December the 19th with the first playoff game, Alabama-Oklahoma. So we're rolling this out. You will, I'm sure, see plenty of notifications about it if you follow the show.
Yeah.
You will have a week to get your picks in, at which point it'll lock, and we're going to open up another game. So it's a week-to-week game. We're going to list out a bunch of prop bets. All you need to do is pick 6 that you think are going to hit. That's it. So it's not the bowl confidence thing. You're not picking winners. You're not going through every bowl game. Bowls are a thing of the past in some regard. Okay? Yeah. So we have taken a little bit of a different spin on this, and we got great response to it a year ago. It'll be open to all. All you need to do is sign up as a free member of our Patreon at verballers.com or patreon.com/solidverbal. Free member, just so that we have a way to contact you. And then after you're in, you're in. Free to join. We'll have great prizes. More to come on that front over the next week.
Sounds super easy to me, especially for those people who are not afraid to compete.
That's it, man.
Yeah, that's it.
Got to have that fire in the belly, you know?
Ty's not afraid to compete. You know that now.
I wasn't.
Not afraid to break a sternum or
No.
shatter a rib cage.
That was an ill-advised decision, but
Yeah.
I think he was all right. He got up.
All right.
So.
All right.
Okay, on that note, for that guy, Dan, for myself, Ty, for our guest of honor, Bruce Feldman, we appreciate, as always, your ongoing support. We will be with you again 3 times per week. See this season through. Catch y'all on Sunday. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.